Greetings, my dear viewer. You're on the channel The Price of Cheating. The channel is for those who appreciate traditional family values and condemn adultery. So be sure to subscribe to the channel. Let's get started. 2 weeks before our wedding, everything seemed to be on track. Then, out of the blue, my fiancée suggested we attend a therapy session together. Although she had been seeing a therapist for some time, this was the first time she asked me to join her. She presented it as a chance for us to have a candid and open dialogue before taking the leap into marriage. While the idea struck me as a bit unusual, I agreed, assuming we already communicated openly with one another. Her request intrigued me. My fiancée had always been reticent about her therapy sessions, rarely mentioning them and never talking about her therapist. Including me in such a personal and private part of her life felt uncharacteristic. Nonetheless, I decided to go along with it. When the day arrived, I felt a mix of curiosity and unease. To calm my nerves, I discreetly set my phone to record the session. Upon arriving at the office, I noticed my fiancée was already inside. After waiting for about 20 minutes, I was invited in. The therapist greeted me warmly, shaking my hand and engaging in casual small talk. At one point, she commented that I didn't entirely match the way my fiancé had described me. Though it sounded complimentary, it unsettled me. Then, turning to my fiancé, the therapist remarked, "This may be more challenging than we anticipated." Her words heightened my discomfort. Despite my unease, I maintained my composure. The therapist launched into a discussion about how modern relationships are evolving. My fiancée held my hand as the therapist explained her preference for a progressive approach to marriage. Initially, I thought this referred to things like dividing responsibilities or achieving shared goals, but soon the therapist clarified, my fiancée wanted the freedom to explore other relationships, specifically to sleep with other men, after we were married. Moreover, she didn't want to offer me the same freedom, fearing I might find someone else and leave her. It became evident that this conversation had been planned well in advance. I listened in silence, though my mind was racing. When they finished, I asked the therapist one question. "Are you a licensed professional?" Her reaction suggested she hadn't expected that response. She confirmed her credentials, and I turned to my fiancé and said, "This is why we won't be getting married or continuing this relationship. I wish you both the best." I left the office with a clear resolution to report the therapist. In the following days, I reflected deeply on what had happened. The recording I made confirmed my recollection of the session and raised serious concerns about the therapist's professional conduct. Her approach felt manipulative, and I began researching how to file a formal complaint. Regardless of the therapist's influence, the outcome was inevitable. I could never accept the idea of an open marriage, especially one so blatantly one-sided. To me, such an arrangement fundamentally undermines the essence of marriage. As I processed the situation, I began to suspect my fiancé may have already been unfaithful. Certain past behaviors suddenly seemed more suspicious in hindsight. This realization made ending the engagement easier, though it didn't shield me from the difficult questions posed by friends and family. I wasn't ready to divulge the full story, particularly as I suspected my ex was sharing her own version of events. She soon began flooding me with calls and reaching out to my friends and family. Her explanations varied, from claiming she had misunderstood the therapist to asserting that the entire idea was the therapist's suggestion. She pleaded for another chance, promising to do whatever was necessary to fix things. But my decision was final. I canceled our wedding plans, terminated our shared financial arrangements, and withdrew from the house loan we had been working on together. Her latest justification involved revealing that during therapy, she had expressed insecurity about our past relationships. She pointed out that I had more sexual experience than she did, and claimed the therapist had proposed the idea of leveling the playing field. Regardless of her reasoning, my stance remained unchanged. With help from a lawyer at work, I began drafting formal complaints to both the clinic and the American Psychological Association, APA. My lawyer noted that the therapist frequently used phrases like, "we think," and "we decided," which suggested a lack of impartiality and potential collusion. As I delved further into the matter, colleagues helped me uncover troubling reviews about the therapist. Two former patients we contacted shared similar accounts of unprofessional conduct, which we included in our complaints. The formal letters outlined the session's events, the therapist's concerning behavior, and the shift in my fiancée's demeanor following her therapy sessions. By the end of the week, I arranged a meeting with both sets of parents to address the situation. My ex and her parents joined my family at our home, and additional details surfaced that further supported my case against the therapist. Once the complaints were filed, the clinic responded swiftly, and the issue began to attract attention. Now, I'm focused on navigating the aftermath. Friends and family are seeking answers, but I'm unsure how much to share. While the recording provides undeniable proof, I'm hesitant to make the situation public. However, if my ex's version of events strays too far from the truth, I won't hesitate to correct the narrative. For now, my priority is to move forward and ensure the therapist is held accountable for her actions. On a quiet Thursday morning, our office was disrupted by an unexpected phone call. Initially, the nature of the inquiry was ambiguous, leaving us uncertain if it was genuine or some elaborate prank. The conversation eventually connected us to someone claiming to be part of their legal team, or perhaps their legal counsel. After verifying the authenticity of the matter, we faintly heard a muffled expletive from their end of the line. They assured us that the issue was being taken very seriously. A colleague speculated that similar problems might have arisen in the past, though none had been accompanied by such compelling evidence. Their subsequent communication noted that the matter was being escalated to the APA, likely prompting their swift response. While I considered my involvement concluded, conversations with two others who had also been under the care of the same therapist left me hoping an investigation would follow. The therapist's approach appeared not only unprofessional, but actively damaging, creating rifts in relationships rather than healing them. For context, the individuals I spoke with included a woman, as well as my former fiancée and her parents. The following Friday evening, my parents invited me over after work. To my surprise, when I arrived, I found my ex-fiancée and her parents already present. The sight of their cars in the driveway made me want to turn around and leave. I had intended to approach the situation on my own terms, but she had evidently decided to take the initiative, a move I was unprepared for and found difficult to accept. Standing outside, she looked as composed and graceful as ever, the epitome of someone who would leave a favorable impression on anyone's parents. She explained they were there to discuss reconciliation, implying that either she hadn't fully disclosed the truth to her parents, or they were skeptical of her account. Clutching a journal, she insisted that reading it would bring clarity. I dismissed the idea, quipping that this wasn't a book club, and headed toward the house. She stopped me, her voice trembling, pleading for 10 minutes alone before involving her parents. Her eyes filled with tears as she extended the journal toward me. At that moment, my sister and her sister appeared, having come outside to check on us. Reluctantly, I took the journal, offered a brief greeting to everyone, and led my ex to a quiet corner of my parents' sprawling garden. This secluded spot, shaded by trees and adorned with benches, provided a semblance of privacy. There, she began to speak candidly. She revealed that she had recently left her job, citing overwhelming stress that had led to a complete mental breakdown. Her mental health had significantly deteriorated under the guidance of her therapist, whose interventions seemed to have exacerbated her struggles rather than alleviating them. She explained that her initial reason for seeking therapy had been work-related stress, but the therapist had obsessively fixated on our relationship, diverting the focus entirely. She admitted that her parents were still unaware of the real reasons for our breakup. She shared that she had started working with a new therapist. I remained mostly silent, letting her share her story. She pivoted the conversation toward repairing our relationship, offering a series of dramatic promises aimed at rebuilding my trust. She vowed to relinquish financial control, grant me unrestricted access to her devices, allow location tracking, and ensure that any future assets would be in my name. These were the same reassurances she had been making through texts for weeks, but hearing them face to face felt overwhelming and deeply unhealthy for both of us. I asked her directly whether she had been unfaithful, Her response enraged me. She admitted to being in situations where infidelity could have occurred but insisted she had never acted on those opportunities. While I believed her, the admission infuriated me. Why put yourself in such situations to begin with? To me, it felt like saying, I was tempted to commit a crime but didn't follow through. The framing of these situations as opportunities, as though they were neutral or even advantageous, only added to my frustration. At that point, I suggested we rejoin her parents and mine for a broader discussion. I also requested that our sisters not be involved, as this was a private matter. My sister objected, but eventually relented. Inside the house, I recounted the events that had led to our breakup, including the troubling therapy sessions and my decision to end the relationship. I avoided mentioning having any recordings, as I had none. To my surprise, my ex confirmed everything I said. Her father's eyes welled with tears, a sight that was deeply unsettling. Her mother questioned her, asking whether her actions aligned with the values they had instilled in her. My ex reiterated her story: workplace stress, depression, a breakdown, and a misguided therapist who had convinced her that our relationship was the source of her problems. She added that the therapist had even suggested I wanted an open relationship, and that she needed to match my experience to maintain our connection. She confessed that my reaction to her behavior had been a wake-up call, shaking her out of this destructive narrative. She left her job and was now searching for something less demanding. Tearfully, she declared she was willing to do whatever it took to mend our relationship. Once again, she urged me to read the journal, insisting it held the clarity I needed. She explained that she had followed the therapist's advice despite her own reservations, trusting their authority. At this point, my parents turned to me, clearly waiting for my response. Attempting to diffuse the tension, I made an ill-advised joke about only reading personal journals if they belonged to deceased poets. It backfired horribly. Though my intent was to highlight the irony of valuing such writings posthumously, it came across as though I wished harm upon my ex. The atmosphere grew unbearably tense, and I reluctantly agreed to read the journal. Later that evening, I briefly examined the journal to confirm its authenticity. The worn cover and faded ink of earlier entries suggested regular use over the past year. The attached pen's ink level seemed consistent with frequent writing. Despite this, I have no desire to read it. No matter what insights it might contain, it won't undo the past or mend the fractures in our relationship. Her new therapist appears credible, a seasoned professional with published works and a strong reputation. Both sets of parents urged us to work things out, as though this were a minor disagreement. Their suggestion enraged me. This wasn't a simple misunderstanding, it was a profound betrayal of trust. Being told to work it out felt like a dismissal of the gravity of the situation. We've known each other for 9 years and we're together for 5. Even if her actions were driven by genuine struggles, I can't imagine returning to what we once had. My perception of her has been irreversibly altered. She feels like a stranger whose life I happen to know intimately. While I still find her physically attractive, her appearance that day seemed meticulously crafted to remind me of better times, from the dress I had given her to the faint scent of my favorite perfume. None of it can restore what has been lost. For now, the journal sits untouched on my nightstand. I doubt I will ever read it. Despite everything, our families are pushing for another meeting next week, hoping I'll reconsider after reading the journal. They believe it's possible to rebuild from the wreckage of this situation. Perhaps we could, but it would never be the same. She remains the woman I once loved, but she is no longer the same person, and perhaps I am no longer the same either. This concludes the story. If you like it, then put your powerful like and subscribe to the channel.